First of all, thank you to the Psychedelics team for putting this project together. My name is Louis, and I'm presenting the Psygaia hypothesis. This hypothesis is a product of my personal journeys with psychedelics. The theory provides a scientifically grounded yet holistic and non-reductionistic view of psychedelic-containing organisms and the relationship to the human organism and planet Earth. It is a top-down view of the Earth, which ultimately involves various scientific and non-scientific disciplines. For the sake of time and comprehension, I've limited this presentation mostly to the bounds of my personal experience, my own research, and scientific data. This is therefore a slimmed down version of the full hypothesis, which is a work in progress. I believe the Psygaia hypothesis is a useful and mostly accurate perspective of psychedelics and our relationship to them on this planet. The view is conducive to our collective healing and transformation as it reframes psychedelics in a way that is logical, while facilitating collective meaning by connecting our individual experiences with psychedelics to a greater whole, which we all share regardless of culture or nation. And that whole is the planet and the cosmos. This is an overview of the presentation. I will begin by introducing Psygaia, which will lead to a statement of the problem the hypothesis addresses. We will then explore the Earth, plants, fungi, and humans, and how psychedelics facilitate a relationship between these organisms. Finally, we will find a solution in a reconnection to nature. So the word Psygaia encapsulates the Psygaia hypothesis, which describes the Earth as an intelligent, self-regulating, synergistic, and complex planetary system within a larger cosmic system. Psy is the prefix for psyche, which now means mind, but once meant soul or spirit. Gaia is the Greek mythological name for the Earth, personified as a goddess. Although I'm not here to suggest the Earth is a goddess, I am here to suggest the Earth, taken as a whole, consisting of various interconnected and interdependent components, forms a collectively conscious, living, and evolving body, system, or more simply, planet. So this is a photo of James Lovelock, who invented Gaia Theory. We have since defined Gaia as a complex entity involving the Earth's biosphere, atmosphere, oceans, and soil, the totality constituting a feedback or cybernetic system which seeks an optimal physical and chemical environment for life on this planet. The Psygaia hypothesis introduces psychedelics into the theoretical framework of Gaia theory, which suggests the Earth forms a self-regulating and synergistic complex system that perpetuates and maintains the conditions for life on Earth. The Psygaia hypothesis therefore situates psychedelics and the psychedelic experience within a framework of ecology and evolution, making psychedelics and the psychedelic experience relevant to our current environmental and psychological health crisis. The hypothesis essentially states that human beings and psychedelic-containing plants and fungi co-evolved for mutual benefit by contributing to the maintenance and perpetuation of life on Earth. As functional components of a system, we are biologically disconnected from the system, and that causes problems. Being born in 1996, the looming threat of the environmental crisis played a significant role in the values I cultivated. Hence, the pollution of our planet via consumerist and materialist culture contributed to the development of my worldview. I mention this background as it may explain the character of the psychedelic experiences and insights I've had, which subsequently informed the development of the Psygaia hypothesis. I also mention this background as it introduces the problem I was dealing with in my youth and which the Psygaia hypothesis addresses. As a child, I felt like something was wrong with or missing from my life. My environment, culture, and society showed me and was pushing me towards things I knew that I didn't want. I felt like I needed something else entirely. And it wasn't until I first tried psychedelics that I realized what I actually needed, which was spirituality. I needed a genuine connection to nature and myself. The hypothesis suggests our species is facing a problem rooted in biological disconnection. A majority of people in industrialized societies live in concrete jungles, work meaningless jobs, consume highly processed foods, and spend most of their lives indoors with faces glued to a screen, away from the sun or raw natural environments. Our culture promotes consuming more than we need as we maintain a consumerist-based economy and seeks to fill a void left between ourselves and a biological need for connection to a greater whole, a need we might define more simply as spirituality. We thus produce excessively and maintain a culture of materialism and consumerism through domination over nature in search of resources to meet our excessive production and consumption. We have cut ourselves off from a source of genetically maintained evolutionary intelligence, which is made accessible to us through chemicals and nutrients found in some psychedelic-containing organisms. Our culture and laws have prohibited and stigmatized our instinct for expanded consciousness and self-transcendence, which has led to widespread psychological problems. As a teenager, I had ADD and was depressed. Around the age of 13, as my ego solidified, I began feeling existential distress and meaninglessness. I regularly contemplated suicide as my life felt meaningless. My outlook on life was deeply pessimistic. Statistics show that the mental health epidemic is on the rise. Depression, addiction, anxiety, and suicide are increasingly common throughout the world, especially the industrialized world. Many people in the world's most economically developed countries are psychologically unwell. Most interestingly, as psychedelics awakened my previous uncertain sense of spirituality and temporarily dissolved my overbearing sense of self, in effect lifting me from depression, I also began to see how the abuse and destruction of planet Earth by humanity's collective, short-sighted, egocentric behaviors mirrored my own self-abuse and destruction through my own short-sighted, egocentric behaviors. I realized how egocentrism led to ecological degeneration and my own degeneration. Like everyone else in the world, I was a product of my environment. Today's planetary environment is degenerating. Pollution is increasingly widespread in the air and on the ground. The overuse of pesticides is destroying the soil we need to grow food on. The forests we rely on to breathe are burning or being destroyed. Coral reefs are dying and polar ice caps are melting. Biodiversity is declining as various organisms are dying as a result of our imbalanced relationship with the Earth. Our biological disconnection has led to psychological imbalance, which is leading us to ecological imbalance. So the Psygaia hypothesis suggests the industrialized human is disconnected from an ecologically and evolutionarily advantageous biological source. A biological disconnection is a result of an interruption in the flow of necessary chemicals and nutrients between plants and fungi organisms with whom we share a mutualistic symbiotic relationship. The disconnection has led to an imbalanced neurochemistry, manifest as an overactive default mode network, and egocentric psychology and behavior. These neurological and psychological imbalances manifest further as depression, anxiety, addiction, and egocentrism, which has led to unwholesome and dangerous behaviors or illnesses such as depression, anxiety, suicide, drug abuse, mass consumerism, mass production, environmental pollution, and in turn, ecological degeneration. Psygaia thus states that human and planetary health are intimately connected because the human organism is a functional component of the Earth system. The ecological crisis and the mental health crisis are intertwined, and psychedelics are not only medicine for our individual minds and bodies, but for our minds and bodies as interdependent components of a highly interconnected system. Nature is alive and speaking to us. This is not a metaphor. I think this quote by Terence McKenna best describes the Psygaia hypothesis. Nature is recursive and it has evolved the capacity to communicate with itself. As we ingest psychedelic-containing organisms, we are in intimate connection to and communication, in a certain sense, with the most primitive aspects of our nature. And coming back to my personal story, what's most important about it is that it wasn't until my first few psychedelic experiences in my late teens that I began healing through a sense or a renewed sense of reconnection to nature. Thanks to psychedelics, my spiritual impulse was ignited, and I was subsequently able to change my perspective on life. Through a new outlook, I began to genuinely care about my existence as part of a whole. I now felt like I was a component of planet Earth and that I was part of a functional and meaningful whole. Throughout the last 7 years, I've had the fortune of meeting various other people whose lives were also changed because of psychedelics. And I've found that this feeling of therapeutic connection to a greater whole, which I call nature, is shared between all of us who have been healing from psychedelics. A fundamental question for Psygaia asks why the planetary system produces psychedelic-containing organisms which reliably occasion seemingly sacred experiences which inform the human organism directly through neurochemical modulation experience, and insight of planetary interconnectedness and cosmic unity. Put another way, why did the Earth evolve organisms that can inform other organisms of cosmic unity and planetary interconnectedness through experiences and insights that feel deeply meaningful or sacred? According to Gaia Theory, the Earth is a self-regulating and synergistic complex system. It is a living and homeostasis-seeking ecosystem composed of many interacting organic and inorganic components. The system seeks to maintain homeostasis and thus evolves accordingly. The human organism is a component of this planetary system, and so are psychedelic-containing organisms. For the planetary system to function most optimally, it must maintain a state of homeostasis where, as much as possible, each individual yet interdependent and interconnected component is in its own state of homeostasis. A depressed, anxious, addicted, egocentric, or traumatized human is not in homeostasis. Fortunately, however, psychedelic-containing organisms, such as some plants and fungi, contribute to human and ecological homeostasis. Organisms work together to maintain and perpetuate the conditions necessary for life on Earth. In this case, psychedelic-containing organisms help regulate human psychology and behavior through neurochemical modulation and psychological healing and growth. Psychedelic-containing organisms, such as psilocybin-containing fungi, are thus crucial to maintaining planetary homeostasis. So the Psygaia hypothesis is rooted mainly in a reconceptualization of our relationship to plants and fungi, two very primitive and ancient organisms of this planetary system. Fungi and plants are organisms with many important functions on planet Earth. They are in large part responsible for maintaining and perpetuating complex life on Earth. Fungi and plants form a mutualistic symbiotic relationship together, meaning they interact with each other for their mutual benefit. Essentially, fungal threads can interact with tree roots, and as tree roots produce food in the form of glucose sugars through photosynthesis, the plants share this glucose with the fungus. Meanwhile, the fungus finds and absorbs nutrients such as phosphates and nitrates from the soil to give back to the tree. In this way, plants and fungi don't only benefit themselves, but the entire forest they exist in, and also the entire planet they exist on. This exchange between plant and fungi species is a chemical exchange, a natural flow of necessary chemicals within a living and self-regulating complex planetary system. This line of chemical communication between the plants and the fungi is essential to maintaining various forms of life, such as human life. Considering the plant and fungi relationship, in addition to the highly therapeutic and transformative effects of psychedelics when used properly, their mechanisms of action, and the evolutionary advantage they impart, the Psygaia hypothesis maintains that the human organism shares a mutualistic symbiotic relationship with some psychedelic-containing fungi and plant organisms. It's also very interesting to compare the effects of fungi in the soil to the effects of psychedelics, or of psychedelic fungi in the human mind. On soil, fungi will actively recycle dead material, eventually providing new life. And similarly, ingesting psychedelic mushrooms will occasion psychological death or ego death. In a sense, the mushroom is also giving the human mind new life by recycling the ego through a process of psychological death and rebirth. But how exactly do psychedelics work? So as we know, psychedelics have a powerful effect on the body and mind. On a material level, animal studies are revealing the mechanisms by which psychedelics reduce inflammation throughout the body. Serotonergic psychedelics also increase neurogenesis, which is the production of neurons, spinogenesis, which is the development of dendritic spines in neurons, and synaptogenesis, which is the formation of synapses between neurons. This indicates that psychedelics have the potential to heal and develop the brain. Lastly, ingesting psychedelic plants and fungi promotes neuroplasticity, which is a crucial aspect of learning and healing. Psychedelics thus seem to optimize the human organism. Recent findings from leading psychedelic research centers, including Imperial College London and Johns Hopkins, suggest that psychedelic use can result in enduring increases in positive traits, such as well-being, life satisfaction, life meaning, mindfulness, and a variety of measures associated with pro-social behaviors and healthy psychological functioning. These positive effects are highly correlated with the event of a mystical experience, which I will soon expand on. Through neurochemical modulation, principally involving serotonin and the default mode network, psychedelics expand global neuroconnectivity, changing the brain's modular organization and simultaneously affecting cognition, emotional processing, perception, and behavior. Upon ingestion, psychedelics lead to a decrease in blood flow and electrical activity in the brain's default mode network, which is a group of brain structures found in the frontal and prefrontal cortex, primarily responsible for advanced cognitive processes in primates. As highly intelligent organisms, human beings have the largest prefrontal cortex. The ego is a product of the default mode network in the frontal cortex. It is responsible for a sense of self, and thus our ability to reflect upon that self in relation to other. This advanced part of the brain is also involved in various mental health conditions, including depression, addiction, and anxiety disorders. Most interestingly, psychedelics decrease activity in the default mode network and reorganize brain activity. These effects provide an opportunity for a reduction in ego and communication between normally distinct parts of the brain. These neurological effects cause the psychedelic experience, the mystical experience, and most significantly, the possibility of psychological healing and personal transformation. Recent scientific literature from leading research institutions describe patterns of subjective experiences that are associated with therapeutic and transformative effects. These effects include heightened creativity, cognitive clarity, and expanded emotional receptivity, more open-mindedness and psychological flexibility, a renewed or enhanced recognition of intrinsic meaning and value of life, a sense of insight into the nature of things, and a strengthened connection to other people, nature, and what some realize as God. This connection is facilitated by what is reported to be a sense of interconnection or unity with all things, which is a common phenomenological aspect of the extensively documented mystical experience, which lies at the core of all religious and shamanic traditions. Across cultures around the world, mystical experience is characterized principally by a sense of cosmic unity or non-duality. Not only is this aspect of the psychedelic experience central to the therapeutic and transformative potential, but it is also crucial to understanding their evolutionary and ecological role within the planetary system. By reducing activity in the default mode network and reorganizing the flow of information throughout the brain, the human being is able to experience itself as part of the larger whole, as part of the entire system which it is a part of, which is the universe. Experiencing this promotes a healthy neurochemistry, which lends the possibility of a healthier psychology. As a result of a more integrated psychological state, human behavior that is harmonious with the whole system can more easily emerge, allowing a greater chance of maintaining and perpetuating the conditions necessary for life. Furthermore, the Johns Hopkins Psychedelic Research Division found that mystical experience occasioned by psilocybin led to enduring personality changes in the trait of openness. Neuropsychological research from 2010 shows that openness is a crucial personality trait correlated with intelligence, creative thinking, and executive functioning. Survival and evolution depend very much on these traits, and a mutualistic symbiotic relationship between plants, fungi, and humans would thus be an evolutionary advantage. Lastly, and very significant to the Psygaia hypothesis, is the recent research from Imperial College London, which suggests that psychedelics used in proper contexts lead to increased nature-relatedness, which itself strongly predicts pro-environmental awareness and behavior. The Psygaia hypothesis therefore maintains that the mystical experience is an evolutionarily conserved mechanism that serves as an ecological and perhaps evolutionary role by contributing to the healing and development of the human organism. As a result, the mystical experience also contributes to the maintenance and perpetuation of life on Earth by promoting harmonious behaviors. On a more speculative note, the hypothesis explores the possibility that humans have access to an evolutionary intelligence or evolutionarily conserved information that is maintained and perpetuated through genetics. By stimulating entropy within the brain, thus mixing up the flow of information throughout, the human organism gets access to normally inaccessible information or intelligence. This information is made available to the human organism through direct experience and insight. This information can either be autobiographical, involving one's own life story, or evolutionary, involving the story of humanity, life, or consciousness itself. This data is maintained through genetics in the human organism and in the psychedelic-containing species. Therefore, by reconnecting to this biological source of evolutionary intelligence encoded into human, fungi, and plant genetics, we may learn directly from evolution. This process entails an ability to access genetically maintained information through human experience. Learning from this biological source allows us to heal and grow, and hence think and behave in ways that are more conducive to further evolution and ecological sustainability. So the presence of endogenous psychedelics within the planetary system and the human organism, the chemical similarity between serotonin and psychedelics, and the ability for psychedelics to modulate brain activity in ways that benefit the human organism and ultimately benefit the environment all suggest that psychedelic-containing organisms play a key synergistic role in the self-regulation of the Earth system through a mutualistic symbiotic relationship between different organisms. This relationship is facilitated by a flow of chemicals between the species, which produces universally meaningful or seemingly sacred experience, and thus provides the human organism a sense of connection to and shared meaning with other organisms, the Earth, and the cosmos. This sense of connection then guarantees a greater chance of ecologically and evolutionarily harmonious and advantageous behaviors. Psychedelics are fundamental components of a healthy planetary system, and without them, we endanger the survival of our species. The Psygaia hypothesis is by no means advocating mass unregulated psychedelic use, and neither is it suggesting psychedelics are the single solution to the world's psychological, social, and environmental problems. However, Psygaia is advocating a global re-education towards psychedelics as important organisms with which we are in a relationship. Psychedelics are a crucial beginning to our sustainability on this planet. If we allow ourselves to change our brains and minds, and in effect our behaviors with psychedelics, our mutualistic symbiotic relationship with plants and fungi can be the sowing of seeds to a multi-generational process of healing, social transformation, and ecological regeneration. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day or evening. Okay, and finally, for some references, you might want to take a screenshot because I will switch to the next page now. Thank you. Goodbye. Have a wonderful evening day.